All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everybody, my name is Jennifer Stirrup and we are having the last in the series of Introduction to R and Statistics for Rookies. Thank you for joining me for this amount of time. It's been a lot of fun holding the course. It's been introductory and I of course look forward to your feedback, and if you get in touch with myself or Mark Tabladello, the Data Science Virtual Chapter Leader, then we can try to work out what you'd like to hear next from us. So the Data Science Virtual Chapter is giving you the chance to save $150 off the registration price. And my email address is there at jenstirrup@sequelpass.org. If you're interested in attending, please let me know. And I can see that Mark is online at the moment. Perhaps what I'll do is I will just pass the baton over to Mark. And Mark might have a few words of introduction. I'm going to make you presenter, Mark. If I can hear you. Yep. Alright, sorry Mark, I can't hear you for some reason. If it's okay, I'll just keep ploughing ahead. There we go. Alright, so if you want to join in the Data Science Virtual Chapter, then we will have $150 off the price of the registration, and to do that you can contact me on that email address, which is jen.stirrup@sequelpass.org. So with that, what I would say is, we've had SQL Rally. There's lots of different virtual chapters for everyone. We have about 28. So if you're interested in this session, then you might be interested in the Business Analytics virtual chapter, the Excel BI virtual chapter, and you may also be interested in, for example, the Business Intelligence one. Okay, some people are saying they can't hear anything. So if a couple of people saying they can't hear anything, I'm just going to... Alright, a few others can hear. Alright, so it looks like somebody says that they can't hear, and I guess it must be you, only one person. Sorry about that. Alright, well I'll keep going anyway. Alright, so if you're interested in volunteering for this or any other aspects of the virtual chapters, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We have lots of opportunities for you to do that. It's a great thing to do for your CV, for example. So please get in touch if you're interested. And if you're not a past member, I suggest that you become one. Our website is at sequelpass.org. You can connect with us in very, very many different ways. I'm on Twitter at Jen Stirrup. Mark, the virtual chapter lead, is on Twitter at MarkTab, all one word, MarkTab. And you can hashtag sequelpass in order to get in touch with us this evening. In the meantime, what I'd like to do is... Now, you find the notes for this session at jenstirrup.com. I'll also put them in the Data Science virtual chapter as well. And what I would do is, in the meantime, is go straight to R and show you a few things. Let's go to that. Most of that. Alright, so we talked previously about RStudio, and I thought it might be worthwhile spending the last session in visualizing some of the data and looking at some formulas as well. Also, I've just realised Mark is on Twitter at marktab.net. That's my fault. So I will make sure. If you're interested in getting in touch with us, I'll put it in the script actually. Now I should say that a hash sign in R is a comment. So if you want to get in touch with Mark, he is on that, and I am on Gin Stirrup. There you go. Right, so what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you an interesting example of missing data and what we actually do when data is missing. Now, missing data is actually a really complex thing to deal with, because if you visualize missing data, and if you, for example, look at a line chart, it looks like the points are drawn straight across from one another. Actually, they're not. What's happened instead is the data points are missing, but it looks as if they are actually connected to one another. So the data set I'm going to use is one which is called WDI, and I'm just going to show you that. We can look in the help files down here. Now I've just done a little search in WDI, and then that means the World Data Bank. So that's what I'll do is I'll pull up that particular field into Explorer, and it's the World's Data Bank. And here we are. So we have data.worldbank.org. And what we do here is we have lots and lots of indicators. So for example, you might have indicators over fertility. It's all about data about development across the world. Maybe you've got GNI, for example. We might have indices of poverty as well, poverty gap, for example. Lots and lots of very interesting data. So if you're interested in using a data set or need to find one, there's lots of very interesting information down here, the environment and so on and so forth. So what we're going to do here is R can actually access the world's data bank using an API. I'll show you how it does that. So we look up API here. What we can see here, so we'll just see if it types in R, see if that gives us. Oh, no, it doesn't. So we'll do Python, because I think the same API can be used by Python as well. There we go, that's the one. So this is actually where we get the data from, and now, so we're going to use the World Bank data APIs, we're going to use them in R, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. Talks a little bit about it down here. The WDI module by Vincent Arobundoc offers convenient access to the data in API, and you can use it with ggplot2, and that's exactly what we're going to do just now. I think it's always worthwhile having a look at the data before we actually continue to do the sums. The reason is we're just interested to see what the data looks like, and I'm going to do that. Alright, so let's go back to R, and here we are. Now what you see here is a little piece of code which is require WDI. And what that's going to do is it's going to load the WDI package for us. And that's quite simply how we call the World's Data Bank API. It's very, very simple, and that's how it works. So what we're going to do now is we're going to search the WDI, the World's Data Bank, for anything with the world's genie in it. Now when we execute this command here, what we see is it does a search for us. It searches the world data indicators for all the indicators that mention the genie. So what is genie? Let's have a little look. The World Data Bank. Oops. Just help with this world data. Here we are. You can see if it's something I've been looking up earlier. And what we have here is the Gini index, World Bank estimate. The Gini index measures the extent to which the distribution of income or consumption expenditure among individuals or households within an economy deviates from an equal distribution. So basically when you start to talk about the Gini index, you can find it in Wikipedia as well. Sometimes the call this the happiness index as well. So it's a statistical measure, but it's talking about the happiness index. So what we're going to do is when we look at the Gini index, you can see lots of data here is missing. And this is quite a difficult thing when you're trying to graph this data, because say for example you wanted to chart the data for Belarus. You've got 2 data points missing here, you don't have any data for Belgium at all. Then Colombia starts to give data, but then it disappears again. So how do we cope with all of this missing data? Well, if you access this data in Power Query, what you'll find is that Power Query will just simply take the data points and just simply miss them out. That's not always what you want to. You might want to have a look at the data and see if you can populate different ways of doing it. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little data set. Our data sets, well, we're going to call it a data frame because that's the right terminology. In R, it would be a data set if it was reporting services or SQL Server, and it's going to be called it's going to be called DFWD. So all I'm going to do is execute that code, and what that will do is that data set, DFWB, it will go off and it will use the WDI API. It will go off and it will look at data which has this particular indicator, which is our Gini index, and it will look at that data for South Africa. South Africa is denoted by here, the code is 2 letters, so that's the ISO 2 standard, and that is going to be for 1991, so it's going to be from 1994 ending 2014. So let's have a look at executing that code. So that puts all of our data into DFWB. So what we see here is DFWB actually gives us a number of rows, and you can see these down here, they are. And this data is taken straight from this page here. That's what the data that the API is actually calling. So what do we do with these missing data points? You can see them here. We've got NA, 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 and we've only actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 data points out of the last 21. So that's less than ideal. So here we have got the year 2009. We've got the value for South Africa just there, and that value is 63.14. So let's have a little look. We're going to look at all the countries this time. We're still going to reuse the same name for the data frame, DFWB, and what we're going to do is take every single year that is data, doesn't have data, we're going to take both for all the countries, and we are going to read that data out. So actually let's run this one again. So that's just running the Gini index against all the countries. I just want to see it for this particular line of code here, which we're going to order it by the year. Okay. So what we can see here, we've got lots of different data points here. So if we run this command here, what that's going to do is it's going to give us all of these data points, but without the ones that are missing, without any. So this time, let's see what the top data points look like. We've got much less this time, as you might imagine. We can see that South Africa is actually the bottom, and the remaining 10 countries are here. So we see Bolivia, for example, is the 10th bottom. So many rows are in our data set in total. We've only got 43 rows in our data set. Now, considering all the countries that we have available to us, having only 43 data sets isn't very clear. The idea here is that the Gini index, the data is not collected every year. So what can we do there? Well, basically what we can do is extrapolate from the data, and I'll show you some functions here. Now you can write your own functions in R. What I'll do is, I've got the name of the person who wrote these functions. I got them from one of the R websites, but when I put them in my blog, I'll make sure to reference them. We've got, what it does is it will take some of the data and work out how the data goes up or goes down, and steps, what the steps are from A to B. So say for example, you've got a data point that's number 1, and the second data point is missing, and then the third data point is present, and it's number 10. So all the function will do is take the values of 1 and 10 and work out what's the halfway point between those two numbers. That's obviously going to be 5. So there's plenty of examples of functions on the internet, and if you want to use your functions, all you have to do is, I keep mine in a separate file just so I've got them all in one place, and then all we need to do is run them. I'm just going to execute these so that they run, and then we'll start to look at them in more detail. What's nice about using R, I think, is that you can write your own functions like this. So let's go back to it. So what we have here is we set a variable called n, and that's basically that the value of that is the length of v. And so what's v then? V is one of the arguments to the function. So if we go and look for this function, linearly interpolate, flat extrapolate, you can see that the value is actually the indicator. So in our example here, it wants to know basically how many indicator counts did we get back. And then what it does here is it looks for the data that is got something in it. Non-NA actually means that the data is available. The data is not null, basically. So then what it tries to do is uses this max extrapolate, and this is one of the functions that you get in R that will help you to work out how you get from point A to point C and work out what point B is in between. And then it just tries to, at that point, there's another indicator function here, and that uses the specific indicator from the Wallace Databank. So this function here very specifically makes a call to the Wallace Databank, because often it gets all of the data. So it's a bit of the magic behind the scenes. It first of all goes and gets all of the data for all available years and orders it by country and by year. And what it does then is it creates a column that indicates whether the data were interpolated and extrapolated. So what that will tell us is we could use this data and try to work out whether the data was interpolated or extrapolated. It means we could use it in Power BI quite easily, for example. So what we do then is it works out the interpolation at this point here. Works out, puts them first of all in order, and then uses the extrapolate function and takes off the data we don't need. So what we have here then is you can actually map the data. So but to do that, first of all, what I'm going to do is actually run the function just here using that datasets dfwb. So it's gone off, and this is going to take a little while, and the reason it's going to take a little while is just simply because it's going off to the internet, it's going up to the WDI site, to the World Databank site, it's going to retrieve the data that it needs, and that's just going to take a little minute or two. In the meantime, I'll see if I can find another file to find something that might interest you. So what we've got here is still running, so it's gone off to get the data. So this time what we want to do is see what the data actually says. dfwb will just simply give us all of the data. So what we see here is this is the Gini value, and you can see the data has been interpolated. If it's not sure what it is, it's gone off to try and guess. See, some of the data points are still missing. That's because it hasn't been able to work out what they are. Now what we can do is we can map the data. I'm going to show you something that looks really nice, I think, to world map. And what we can do there is you can see there's a world map package here. Oops, didn't mean to open that, never mind. So that gives you some of the information about the particular package. So there's a world map package. You can use this to visualize global data, and it looks really nice. So if I were you and you get the chance, if you look up our world map, here's some examples of how the data might look. But anyway, I'll leave you to look at that one offline. So what we're going to do here is map the data. Again, this is another function which is called map WB data. What it does is it goes off and says it explicitly requires the world map. It gets a data set which is assigned here. Then what it does is it goes and joins the data, uses this function which comes with world map, and what that does is uses the data set, uses the country code, the format that that's in, and then it just uses that information in order to join that to the map functions. Then we've got title and things here, but let's look and see how that actually looks. So it's gone off to think about it for a little while. While that's doing that, we can write the data out to Power BI. So, sorry, let's take that. Now I don't want to write check rate, we don't know what that is, but I do want to write out this data frame to a file, and I'm just going to call it world map CSV. So what we can see here is our map appears at the right hand side. And that looks quite nice, although it took a little while to render it on my machine. Remember, it's gone up to the internet to go and get the information. To do something like that in Excel would take some time, I imagine. And if you want, what you can do then is export that so that you can save it as an image or as a PDF file. So what I'm going to do for the moment is I'm going to have a look to see where that file actually is. I'll find that information for us there. Right, so excuse me while I dig out the file for the world's databank, because what we could do then is put the data into Power BI if we wanted. Alright, I've got the data here. Right, so here's the data, and all I did there with R was I used a little command to write CSV to write out the data and the data frame out to a file. So what we could do there is take the data. Now we still see we've got some NAs here. So what we want to do really is take those data, and we can do that and take it out simply with Power Query. So I'm going to highlight the data source and I'm going to use the table. The table's headers, yes it is. So the interesting thing is here is, although we still have some data which is NA, it does mean that we don't have as much data missing as we did before. But we still need to let people know if our data is missing or if it's present or not. So what I want to do, and I'll do this in Power BI, is I'm going to filter the data, so we take out data which equals that. So the rest of the data I'm going to leave it like it is. All I've done is taken out the missing data. So what I'm going to do here, it says data type is any. I want to say that's a decimal number. Use first row of the headers, which we've already done. So all I'm going to do now is close and load that. We'll load it to the data model. So it's off to think about it. So what we'll do now is we'll create a quick Power View. So, no, we don't have that. It's a CSV file, that's fine. So this file is a CSV file. In order to use Power View, it's got to be an Excel file. So let's take that and put it into the Excel format. And then what we see is that Power View comes back again. Very, very glad to see that. So we'll do a quick Power View. So what we've done here is we've taken the data that's missing and we've tried to take a guess at populating it and how the data might look. Now that means we've a bit of a richer data set in order to deal with. Also means we could filter out the interpolated data and just use the supplied data if we wanted. Alright. Data's still loading. Hello data, come back to me. Alright. So now our data is in Power View. It's taken all of the data across. Of course we don't want to do that. We don't need column 1, which is just an identifier. Country name, we will keep that. Take out the ISO code. We'll leave in the Gini indicator. Now everything is the same year, so we don't need to show that. What I would probably like to do is filter this sheet. I want to filter it by the source. So what I want to do is identify whether the data is interpolated or not. In the moment I'm just going to take all. I'm going to take the data off. So now what we could do if we wanted would be to create a map with this data. Here we go. So the Gini map there. So what I'd like to do then is we can make it look a bit more interesting. So we've got the size being the Gini value. Now what we could do is we could change the colour so that we could identify what is and what is not extrapolated. So what we can see here is that for South Africa for the year 2009, a lot of the data is simply extrapolated. We don't have data for that. So that's what the red is. Oh no, in fact, sorry, I beg your pardon. The red's data is supplied. I didn't read that properly. And we are interpolating and guessing at the blue data. So that works quite well then, I think. You can see who's actually giving data for that year and who isn't. So we have the data for Russia, 39.6. Then we've got for Brazil, 53.87. Uruguay, Argentina, Chile. So we can see exactly which data we want to see. And we could filter that as well. We could also, if we wanted, create a map with the data as well. But the point here, where R has been useful, R has helped us to identify interpolated data and it's given us the supply data. If we had not done that in R, we would only have these data points available to us because we wouldn't have interpolated anything. So at least this way, it gives us some more data points that we could use, and then it tries to work out the difference between the two. It gives us more data, and if somebody's interested in only the supply data, then they have the ability to filter that if they want. Alright, So with that kind of concludes the session for today. I just wanted to explain that R actually does sit quite well with Power BI. We can import the data from R into PowerPivot, and we can start to analyse and play with the data there. And what gives us a value is these functions, we can reuse them as often as we need to, and it means you can give your data to other people and they can replicate your result as well. So with that, I'm just going to see if there are any questions. So be with me, please. No, I don't see any questions, so if anyone's got any questions, please don't hesitate to shout out just now. Our Twitter, on Twitter at jenstewart.com. You should log in now. Typical. Alright. Let's hope I remember my password, eh? Did it match the records? Alright. I'm sure it probably did. Anyway, we're on Twitter at SQL Pass. If anybody's interested in giving us a shout. I see one question there. Let's see. Is this the first class of the session? No, actually, we've been doing a really introductory session. This is actually the last one in a series of 5. I'm still in the process of putting the videos up, and our videos will be going up here, datascience.sqlpass.org. All that information is up there. Now, Mark Tabnet is on Twitter, and what I suggest is Mark is currently looking at what our next course will be. So if you are interested in giving any sort of suggestions on the sort of things and topics that you'd like to see, or perhaps even like to teach on, then please do get in touch with us. The scripts will be available at the same location as well. On the data science page, we've actually got a small resources page. So what I'll do is I'll start to post my code and material up there. It will probably be over the weekend or early next week. I'm trying to organise SQL Saturday Edinburgh as well, and I'm also part of the team that's spearheading the Past Business Analytics Conference, so I've got quite a lot on my plate at the minute, but I'll do my best anyway. Now one last check for questions. Let me see. Yes, Drew, yes, the interpolate extrapolate will be in my site. What I'll do is I'll reference the person who originally wrote that material. I found the functions and they were just so good I thought there was no point in me doing it myself. So I'll make sure to give that person credit because that's only fair. Is credit given where credit is due. I'm sorry I've forgotten the gentleman's name. I think it's something like eurekastatistics.com, but I'll make sure to reference it just so everybody's got it. If you're interested in more information about R, obviously we're starting to build material here. Look up rbloggers.com. There's a whole wealth of material here, and I really recommend you look at this one. If you are on Facebook, I recommend you like it as well. You'll get, if you like the page, you'll get lots and lots of our tips throughout the day, and that's actually really, really useful. So with that, I guess I don't see any more questions, so I guess we'll wrap it up there. And just keep looking up the data science virtual chapter over the course of the next week or so. We'll try and get everything up. And if you're interested, twitter.com, marktabnet. Mark is the virtual chapter lead, so please give him a shout. Oops, there we go. Mark Tabnet, and give him a shout and let him know what you'd like to see for the virtual chapter in the future. Alright, and with that, wherever you are in the world, good morning, good evening and good night, and thank you once again for joining me in this 5-week journey.